welcome back to the NoScore Review Show. I am your host, Nick Green, and today I am joined by Shay Martin. Welcome back, Shay.
Thank you, Nick.
And I'm also joined by my resident Last of Us fanboy, Cole Parkinson. Cole, welcome back.
Hi, I've been on, 5 podcasts, and 4 of them have been about The Last of Us. So if I didn't get invited to this, I would have burned your house down. I would have flew to Vancouver and burned your house down.
You would have blacklisted all of my social media and everything NoScore. You would have been on a mission to take me down.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe the resident Last of Us fanboy, not by choice at this point. You're kind of indebted to be the Last of Us go-to expert guy, you know?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I have stated it's my favorite game over and over and over again. So,
well, and I've been there for probably at least 3 of the 5 podcasts. So
I think you've been through all of them. So yeah, so
exactly.
We're even.
Yeah. What can I say? The evidence speaks for itself. We love talking The Last of Us, and we are not stopping here. So, we are talking The Last of Us Season 1, the HBO adaptation of the famous Naughty Dog Sony Studios game. I don't know, or PlayStation Studios, I think is their proper name now.
No.
The HBO adaptation, which just wrapped up last night as of the time of recording. The first few minutes of this review are going to be no spoilers for the show. Or we'll try to avoid game stuff too. But yeah, fear not, no spoilers for the first little bit. We'll just get into our general thoughts, and then we'll go full spoilers with our highlights and lowlights and whatnot. So without further ado, Cole, you want to kick things off?
Sure. I think it's easily the best video game adaptation I think ever. I don't think many people would disagree with that. It's not perfect, I don't think, but it's hard to be perfect in any medium, really. So without getting into too much spoilers, I think the casting was great, set design was awesome. It was a little weird being like, oh, I've been there before, I've driven past that. Like I stayed in that hotel, and when in episode 5, like I stayed in that hotel. The room they went into was the room we stayed at, so that was a little weird. But I mean, just top to bottom, it was just fantastic. And you don't even have to be a fan of the game either to get into this. Like,
totally.
I think it honestly would probably help if you didn't play the game, because there was points where it was like, it's not hitting me nearly as hard as it did the first time I played it.
Yeah, totally.
But at the same time, like, it was still cool to see this thing be put out into a medium where it was live action. So, I mean, I can't really complain about that. So yeah, it was awesome. 9 episodes in and out. It's really not a long series either. So
totally. Yeah. It uses its time very well.
Yeah.
Seeing the Lethbridge was very surreal and very jarring at times. It's like, oh yeah.
I drive by that every single day.
Yeah, exactly. Also, just as a bit of context, I was hoping to get someone on who hadn't played any of the games before, but unfortunately that is not the case. All 3 of us have played the games. We're very familiar with the source material, as it were. And Cole, probably the most. So you've played, what did I
know,
7 or 8 times. Yeah.
When it first came out, I played it 3 times in a row because I was like, I don't want to stop. So yeah.
Yeah,
it is my favorite game of all time.
This is who we're talking with tonight, Shay. Yeah,
8 or 9 times.
Yeah.
How many hours would that be?
Yeah.
Well,
it's about 10 to 15 hours, so easily over 100.
Yeah, so you have like a master's degree then.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for like me and Cole have discussed many times, if it wasn't for the multiplayer trophies in the original game, he would have platinumed it probably 8 times over by now.
Yeah.
You've platinumed part 1, right? Yes. The remake or the yeah. So.
Shit.
And I've honestly thought about replaying it, but
dude,
we'll see.
Well,
I might have to.
Yeah, me too.
Shit.
It was a very strong adaptation. I think we've been pretty lucky in recent years with getting some stronger adaptations, like with the Sonic films. in particular coming out. And then this is just speculation, obviously, because the Mario movie hasn't come out yet. But based on trailers and everything, it's looking to be very, authentic to the feel and the world of Mario. But yeah, this is also, I think, like the first, if not like one of the only video game adaptations. Actually, I guess now I'm thinking of Uncharted, but like the adaptations where the video game was very narrative driven, right? I mean, like just now remembering Uncharted, that's probably like the stark contrast almost. But I mean, like that film has been in development hell for like almost a decade now. So that's a whole other bag of worms we won't get into.
They just took parts from each of the games and put it into the movie, where it's not like a linear, this is Uncharted 1 or Uncharted 2 or Uncharted 3 or 4.
Yeah, this is a best of type thing.
Yeah.
Shay, how about you? Your general thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Cole, you said it really well. Like, it is most definitely the best adaptation I've ever seen of any video game. I decided, or when I saw the initial trailer, I was going into it very cautiously. I get very excited very easily. So I decided to set my expectations for like Tomb Raider degree adaptation.
That's fair.
Like it might be a little bit of fun, but like, you know, at the end of the day, you're not going to really bring anything home. But I was really happy to be proven wrong. And the performances in it are just outstanding. We'll get into it more. I just wish there was more episodes, or like they were a bit longer. Yeah, just to note, I am not like, I played the video games, but you're gonna hate me, Cole. I like played part 1 and I rushed it because I knew this was being filmed. Like I knew it was in pre-production, so I just like skipped all the cinematic scenes, and I'm like, I know,
it's like the most important part.
No, because part 2 had like just like was out, and I'm kind of a prude when it comes to graphics, and I had just gotten the PlayStation 5, and it was my first PlayStation ever, and I was just like, okay, I really just want to get a part 2. I'm like, I don't care what this like I don't care. I just want to see what the big deal is. So
wait, so Shay, have you played the remake part 1, or did you play the remastered?
The remastered.
Okay.
I wish I waited for the remake, but I pulled the
trigger once that
early.
baby drops down to like $20, like absolutely pick it up, because it looks just as good, maybe if not better than part 2 now. Like it's right in line with how part 2 looks.
I know, I've been seeing that on YouTube. I was so mad at myself. I bought the remastered one, like I swear 3 or 4 months before the remake came out.
Hey, you know what? From 2 like diehard like fanboys, it's like that's not money wasted in our opinion. So I mean, still great.
Yeah, I mean 2013 graphics are still pretty decent.
Yeah,
I think it was 2013. Yeah, still pretty decent.
Remastered was 2014, but it still looks really good for even 2014. Like
totally.
Yeah. But yeah, overall, really happy with everything. Of course, have some critiques about it, as you would anything, as you would on a podcast.
Yeah. That's what a podcast is for, right? Airing your grievances. I think we've been hurt time and time again. We still are getting hurt nowadays with these video game adaptations. With like Uncharted and Halo being some of the most recent like culprits. So it's really nice to hear, like just kind of talking a little bit more about expectations. It's really nice to hear the level of care that was going into this when all of the news was coming out about this show. Like Cole, I know me and you, like it's weird. It's a little weird now thinking, just kind of pulling back and be like, oh my God, we're finally here now. Cause like we were crazy. Talking about like all this stuff, like earlier last year, and even maybe
I came up and visited you when you were working on the show. So I mean,
exactly.
It feels like just yesterday.
Yeah, it's so wild. Weird. But just the level of care that was going into this, and the level of talent too that was handling it as well. Like I had luckily finally checked out Chernobyl before all this news dropped. So I had a bearing of like the mastery that was like putting their hands on this property. Chernobyl was fantastic. Something I'll want to own on physical copy and rewatch time and time again in the coming years. So Craig Mazin was like sold me from the start, and then just hearing like Naughty Dog and Neil Druckmann being so closely involved and only becoming more involved as production went on. Like I think like before the show even got started shooting, like Neil wasn't supposed to direct any episodes, or like he was supposed to be like producer, showrunner type, and writer, obviously, and more like a steward of the source material. But like he got right in there. I think he might have directed at least one episode. I don't remember if he directed two. Just the one? Okay.
Left Behind,
yeah. But yeah, it just got even more involved, and not even just the dev team and Neil himself as the creative lead, but the talent too came back, which is a fantastic. I don't think that's really spoilers at all. But like the talent came back, which was so awesome to see as like a fan of the games who has played them. Getting them or letting them be incorporated into the Hollywood version of it is so awesome to see. And it's so funny to hear, like, if you listen to all the like side content that has come out from this show being released in the last few weeks, of like different podcasts and behind the scenes little videos and stuff of like Troy Baker just being so surreal or like so lost in like talking about how he was on set, and then him seeing the actor playing Joel like a dozen yards away or whatever, and being like, I feel like I'm in a time machine, or I'm like in the multiverse right now. It's so funny listening to them talk about that experience. But yeah, not only probably one of the best adaptations, but like just the closest. They do deviate a lot, but I think they were welcome deviations. I think anyone who loved the games will love this show, and I think there's enough different here that it will keep you on your toes a little bit. And anyone, like I said, I would have liked to get someone on who hasn't played the games, but from what I've heard from people we work with, me and Shay, a couple people haven't played the games and they're watching this show and they're enjoying it from what I've talked with them about. So
definitely, it's actually been really interesting. I've one of my partners, she didn't know anything about the game, not into like, the zombie apocalypse type genres. Like, she said it herself, I probably would never have given this a shot. And when she sat down, we watched the first episode and she was like, yeah, like, I don't really get it personally, but like, I'm happy to watch the rest with y'all. And then by the second episode went in, she got hooked and she was just in it. She was like, every week she was like, oh, I'm so excited for it to come out on Sunday. So like seeing it through her eyes
cool.
was so nice. And then my other partner, like, she sat with me with the video games a little bit, so she kind of has a rough idea about like the key moments that happen. So just being able to watch those two, like getting feedback on like those two perspectives, I thought was really interesting.
That's awesome. It's actually funny, like talking about not being a like fan of zombie apocalypse games, some of the like discourse that has come out about this show, and this is like minor spoilers, it's like super general spoilers, but it's like that actually works in favor because this is barely a zombie apocalypse show or a zombie show in the first place.
It's called The Last of Us for a reason. It's about relationships between people and like
there are, I think, multiple episodes where not a single zombie even shows up. So like it's funny hearing that.
None than there is with a whole bunch or even one.
Exactly.
Right?
So,
unless if you ask Ben Shapiro, which he thinks.
That's not
worth.
We'll leave that to them. Yeah.
That's not worth their time.
We'll let them have their corner of the internet, and we'll have our corner of the internet. How's that?
Our corner is much cooler.
Yeah. Hey, you said it, not me. Cool. I don't know if we want to get into much else. Cole, did you want to talk about? I feel like we're pretty like similar in our viewpoints of our confidence. That's kind of where I was going with this before like I got off on a tangent or whatever. But like I had the utmost confidence with this show going.
So like originally it was supposed to be a movie, which I never understood how you can condense that game into a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like you would have to cut so many things, and like the impact of Joel and Ellie becoming, you know, a team and basically father and daughter over 2.5 hours doesn't work.
Yeah.
So when they announced it was going to be HBO, that was number one. I was like, okay, that makes sense. And then it was like Neil's going to be heavily involved. Okay, check 2. And then when Craig Mazin was announced, it was like, I don't know how you can screw this up. Like you definitely can, but the way they were talking about it in interviews before and on Twitter, and like just how much they love these characters, like, yeah, I mean, Neil didn't even write a lot of the episodes. Craig wrote the vast majority of them. So I mean, like, sure, the blueprint was there, but he could have done his own thing and went off on different tangents, but he understood the material and, you know, what it was about, and, you know, the actual, you know, sure, it's about the apocalypse and, you know, the clickers and the infected, but if that was the main focus going into the show and into these 9 episodes, it wouldn't have been nearly as well received. So I know there's a big discourse about, oh, there isn't a lot of infected. I would rather less infected than more infected and less focus on Joel and Ellie, because without Joel and Ellie, like, I don't think anyone would really care. It's just another zombie show at that point. So,
well, and like, I mean, this, barring haven't actually watched Uncharted, like I feel like Uncharted could be a good like reference point, or like a other end of the spectrum where like all focus was on spectacle and these big set pieces and selling tickets, right? Instead of focusing on what made those characters special and the dynamic and interactions between them. Obviously not anywhere near to the degree of The Last of Us, because there's definitely way more depth, I think, with that game than Uncharted, because Uncharted's still very much like a...
For sure, yeah.
Totally, yeah. But yeah, I think it's so interesting to look at them together because it's from the same freaking studio. So like, what the hell? But yeah, had nothing but confidence going in, and I won't say it exceeded my expectations, but it absolutely met my expectations.
Yeah, same with me. Again, it was going to be hard to beat the game, and I don't think it did, but I have such an emotional connection to the game that expecting it to be better or even, you know, on the same level, it just wasn't fair to the show. So there was times where I was like, oh, I hope this comes up from the game, and then it didn't. And then part of me was like, oh, that sucks. And then the other part was like, but I get it, because you know, you got to have some differences, otherwise just play the game at that point, right?
Totally.
So, and the two mediums are also just very different.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's been one of the big talking points of that whole discourse of like, oh, there's not enough zombies in the game or in the show, and like that's kind of like your whole gameplay loop in the game is like fighting zombies and fighting like some raider humans and as well and cannibals.
Yeah, there was only one point in the show where I was like, there should have been some kind of like combat here. We can get into that later, but for the most part, it was like, I get why you cut out a whole bunch of this stuff, because it, like, watching them fight clickers or, you know, raiders for 20 minutes of an episode doesn't really work in this medium. Like in a game, you have to have it, but here it's like
you need something to do.
I don't know. Yeah, exactly. So there was only one time where I was like, there should have been something there, but overall, I think over 9 episodes, it's pretty good.
The more I sit with it, the more like I check out like the supplementary content that has come out, talking to like the talent behind it and why they made these decisions, has garnered a better understanding of like, yeah, that totally makes sense. And like you said, Cole, it's that emotional connection to the game, right? Like we're so used to like this story that we've sat with for multiple years and played multiple times, so it's like,
I could have watched it with my eyes closed and still known what was coming, right? So exactly. It's hard to separate.
Well, by the sounds of it, you might be able to play it with your eyes closed pretty soon.
Probably.
Excellent. Without further ado, I think we will use that as a jumping off point to get into full spoiler territory. And knowing us and our tangents, I think this will not only be full spoilers for Last of Us Season 1, but it will also be, obviously, if that wasn't clear, spoilers for Last of Us Part 1, the game, and also spoilers for Part 2, just as kind of a safety blanket a little bit, just in case, because I feel like we probably will go there.
There's some things I need to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. So full spoilers going forward. If you don't want to know anything about what happens in The Last of Us Season 1, click off now, go check it out, and then come back to check out what our full spoiler thoughts are. Or if you don't care, then buckle up. Here we go. Highlights and lowlights. Shay, we'll start with you. What are some big highlights or lowlights with the show? Do you have a favorite episode? Do you have a particular performance you want to talk about?
Oh, definitely. Highlight for sure, Bella Ramsey's performance.
Yeah.
Yep.
I know, of course, there was like a lot of pushback when it was released that they were Ellie because of like, the physical appearance. That a lot of people were like very unsure about it. I definitely went into it with no expectations. I haven't really seen their performances much. I never watched Game of Thrones or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But the first frame that we saw Bella Ramsey in episode 1, just the way they held themselves, I'm like, holy fucking shit, that's Ellie.
Yeah.
That's Ellie. Yeah. And yeah. And just the being able to watch how they progress and knowing Ellie's whole journey, and specifically in episode 7, Left Behind, which is my personal favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Surprisingly, I'm looking at IMDb, it is the lowest rated episode.
I noticed that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's bizarre, but their performance in Left Behind it moved me in a way that I wasn't expecting of this. Like, I understand that obviously this scene was like pretty close to the video game, as mentioned prior. This kind of worked to my benefit in the experience, though. I don't really remember this much from the Part 1 video game, so I knew that her friend was going to die, Ellie's friend. But I didn't remember any of the details, or really just kind of like the low subtle romance that was building between the two. And Bella's performance of just the little like micro actions between the two, the little glimpses, the little like touches, and just like the complexity of being a 14-year-old and having feelings for your friend who's the same sex, that you feel like, the whole connection feels like inappropriate, but you can't have like, just like the performance was just like
so authentic, right?
So freaking authentic.
Very.
And I know Bella's also like, I actually don't know their orientation, but I know they're queer, so like that really also probably helped in their performance.
Totally.
Yeah, so Bella, that's part of the show in my opinion.
Yeah.
Lowlights, I should have had this written down in advance.
we can bounce back and forth. I've got a little bit to say about Bella as well. I was like, so just on the whole discourse of like the casting choices, like the internet and the gaming community, capital G gaming community.
Yeah, the gaming community for sure.
Gets into a very regular, I guess it's just most fan bases where they get into this regular hell loop of like, oh, let's do fan casting and stuff. And it's almost always people who just look exactly like the characters from whatever they're adapting. Yeah. And it's very rarely like, I mean, obviously like Josh Brolin is a very good actor, and he also happens to look like Joel. So, I mean, that, but like, yeah, it's almost entirely based off like, well, they look exactly like them, so I guess they would play them. But that's not what you're looking for in talent. You're just looking for the right performance and the right feel for the role.
And this happens with every big property, right? Heath Ledger with the Joker, every single Batman actor ever, like Spider-Man every single time. Any big property, it doesn't matter who they cast. There's going to be backlash. And
the only time I think,
like, 100%.
The only time I think they actually can sort of avoid that was with the Star Wars sequels, but that was because they were brand new characters, so there wasn't really any adaptation to be
and
had,
there were
right?
no-name people at that point too.
And
Like,
that
how
too,
could
right?
you? Yeah, like when Ben
You
Affleck
have
was
no
casting
idea.
Batman, you have this huge catalog of Ben Affleck movies to go back
Totally.
and say, how was he Batman? Same thing
Yeah.
with Heath Ledger, right? But it's like
Yeah.
these guys are actors; they're paid to act, and they're getting casted, and they're in these casting rooms getting looked at. But people on the internet think they know better than everyone else, which
Yeah,
just
no.
Yeah.
drives me nuts.
We really need to trust casting directors a whole lot
Yeah.
more
Absolutely. Yeah.
because I do
It's a
think
reason
like
that's their job.
yeah, for sure. And I think the expectations that we put on them, because I do feel I'm putting myself in their shoes. If I were ever in that position, you would feel a huge pressure to get
Absolutely.
what like the fan favorite is. Like I know people were really pushing for Elliot Page
Mm-hmm.
to be
Yep.
Ellie for years. And I think we could all agree Bella just did so much better, and Elliot, it's just not also appropriate at this time
Well,
or
and
And
well, I
anymore.
mean,
age-wise too, right? Like,
yeah, I was just gonna say,
Yeah,
like, a bunch of things aside, like age is like one of the factors now, because like Elliot could
definitely.
actually play a really good Ellie in part two,
yeah. But
debatably,
what? Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I love Caitlin Deaver, and I know she was rumored at one point too.
right?
But
Yep.
she's also like mid-20s, so like
Yeah.
you need
Yeah.
somebody
That's
who's
the whole thing.
somewhat in that age category, and you can't have it be a 30-year-old person
Yeah.
be Ellie because it
Yeah.
just doesn't work.
It just doesn't
In a
work.
video
Yeah.
game, it could definitely work. Like Ashley
Absolutely.
Johnson is my Ellie. Like when I think of Ellie, that's my Ellie. But in a medium where it's live action, like it doesn't work. So you need to
No.
find somebody in that age bracket that can do the job. And I think they found the perfect person. Like
Yeah.
they
They
did.
did.
I did take a little bit of warming up to Bella in the first couple episodes. I think I would
Oh, really?
say probably end of 2, or like no, actually I think it was maybe 4, because like 3 didn't really have
Yeah.
much of Ellie and Joel. Episode 4 is really where I was like, okay, yeah, I'm in. And that was also a very, like, the entire episode was just Joel and Ellie on the road basically, so
Yeah.
that definitely helped. um but yeah, I was a little iffy at first. Not by like looks or anything, I couldn't really care less on that. It was just the performance felt maybe a little rocky on that first watch through. I imagine I'll be more on board once I go back and rewatch those first few episodes, but 4 was really where I was like, okay, yeah, she's Ellie for sure.
Yeah.
Pedro Pascal was fantastic as Joel. There was a lot of like discourse on that too, but I mean, it was basically the same issues as the other discourse, so there really isn't much more to say about that.
I think it's safe to say that Pedro Pascal's now the internet's best friend or
Yeah.
the internet's daddy, really.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Apparently that's a thing now, which I mean, sure, fair, but okay. Yeah, it's like I mean, and another thing with like the whole actor like role discourse is like rarely ever is the discourse being like, this actor has had a history of not like doing very good performances in their past work, therefore I'm worried about them in this role.
Mm.
That's like
The
almost
last
never the
thing.
case. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's like the last
They don't
thing.
look like the character and what I think the character looks
Yeah.
like. It's like,
Yeah, exactly.
how?
They
Why would
weren't
you
who
cast
I
somebody?
picked in my fan casting 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So, but yes, that aside, I really loved Pedro Pascal. He brought like everything to the role of Joel that I was hoping for. Cole, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, casting wise, they knocked it out of the park. I don't think there was a single, main cast member I was like, oh, that's weird. Like
Mm-hmm.
that didn't really fit. Everyone was awesome. Like one person I'm so excited to see more of is Tommy. Like I think
Yeah.
they hired such a great actor there,
Yeah.
and there's not a whole lot for him to do in season 1, obviously, but season 2, I totally expect there to be like a few Tommy centric episodes because we
Mm-hmm.
know he's in
Mhm.
Seattle at the same time, but we don't know what he's doing. And I'm so excited to see that. Like that might be my most anticipated episode coming up in season 2 or 3. I
Mm-hmm.
guess we don't really
Yeah.
know when
Just the
that'll happen. But
prospect of him getting more
yeah,
screen time
Gabriel
is
Luna was
exciting.
just awesome. He seems like such a great dude. And yeah, just
Yeah.
him and Joel, the dynamic, like very game like maybe a little rocky. Like there was times where like these guys might just fucking throw fists at each other. That's awesome, but they didn't. But yeah, casting wise, just you guys nailed it. Everybody was so good.
Yeah, there really was not a out of place performance, and also just kind of going back to what I stated earlier about bringing back the most of the original main cast as well. Like Merle Dandridge got to reprise her role as Marlene, which was fantastic, and she did just as well as the first time. Bringing back Troy and Ashley for some like Easter egg roles was awesome to see. And then what's Tommy's name? Jeffrey Pierce? Is that his name? Yeah. Seeing Jeffrey Pierce in the Pittsburgh episodes, or was it
Kansas City?
Right. Yes. Kansas City. Seeing him was fantastic. I love that his voice is just the exact same as Tommy's. It's
Very
like, oh
similar.
my God.
It was kind of jarring the first time.
It was a little bit, yeah.
I knew who it was.
But he looks so different from Tommy in the game. So it's like, okay, well, we're just going with it.
That probably helps because, I mean, Troy doesn't look like Joel either. So, I mean, like my girlfriend watched me play the game and Troy came on and he had a few scenes. And then eventually I was like, do you know who that is? She's like, no, not really. I'm like, well, that was Joel in the game. She's like, oh, shit. Okay. So, yeah, it was like the performance he had in the game was just so good. Like, and to transfer it over to James, who was like such a minor character. But every time he was on the screen, I'm like, I can't believe I'm watching this right now. It's wild.
Yeah. So surreal. Cole, you touched on it very briefly in your general thoughts, but the set design and the production design was immaculate in this show. Good. I feel like I remember seeing a news article about it being HBO, like one of HBO's most expensive shows to date. It looks like it. Like they transformed, and it's a good thing they did, because it would have stuck out like even more of a sore thumb as looking like Alberta from two like homegrown Alberta boys. It did, but like I mean, when you use the left bridge, it's gonna look like the left bridge. Like, come on.
Yeah.
But they did a fantastic job in transforming Alberta, and like almost the entirety of Alberta too, because it wasn't just that they were like in Calgary and Edmonton and Lethbridge. They like went all over the place. They were in Okotoks, they were in the Rockies, they were in Canmore.
Were they in Kananaskis, I think, at one point as well?
Yeah, I think they were there as well. But yeah, it was a stunning show. Yeah, Fort Macleod. Yep. I got to go to Fort Macleod for that stuff. That was crazy.
You know what? It's interesting. When I watched the first episode, I think my only critique of it was the production design.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I haven't been able to find anybody else that agrees with me, so I think I'm just objectively wrong.
Hey, you're allowed to your opinions. What exactly did you find wrong with the production design?
The production design itself was like everything they selected, everything felt very staged to me, especially in the daytime exterior shots, like the streets. Everything felt very like, when you're setting up a shot and you have the whole production design team, they're like set dressing and they're doing it all in accordance to the camera angle. Maybe this is just also so ingrained in my head that I can't turn it off. I just felt like everything was too strategically placed and it was taking me out of it. Felt a little too perfect. Yeah, I just felt like everything was on a stage for me. At first, I thought it was the cinematography married with the production design. I was like, something just kind of feels like they're not quite on the same level, because like cinematography also can really aid production design and vice versa.
Sure.
But I was very happy to be proven wrong, because I think episode 1 was really the only time I was taken out of the story, and that's also when I'm going to be like, the highest critique is in the opening. But
sure.
Overall, to wrap that up, it was just like the game, which I think is what everybody's looking for. So
you could also almost frame that in like a lens of this is the before the event too, right? It's like all very happy and hunky-dory, nothing's wrong, everything's perfect. And then when it goes wrong and shit hits the fan, then that's when shit really goes wrong. I will be a little bit biased in my perspective of episode 1. I was a little worried about when I was going to watch that I was going to be completely taken out of it. I wasn't completely taken out of it, but a little bit from having worked on the premiere. So that's going to be my bias injected into that straight up.
Sorry, Nick,
so
to be critiquing only episode 1.
How dare you work on or critique?
It's
it is my fault. Blame the trainee every time.
It's always the camera trainee.
It's always the camera trainee. Yeah, I think overall it looked fantastic. I think one gripe a little bit for me, I would have loved to, and then maybe this was more dependent on Alberta weather because that would make total sense, but I would have loved to see more of the fall season incorporated. But like I said, the nature of Alberta weather, I imagine they probably had to work
summer at that point. Like we had summer until like November sometimes. So you're gotta shoot when you gotta shoot. So
shoot when you gotta shoot, exactly. Yep. What else? Yeah, the visual effects looked fantastic. I'm so glad, like talking about bringing back all of the talent from the first game, bringing back Gustavo to score the show was the smartest choice ever because that score is just so iconic and it like just helped sell the show that much more. When you have such an iconic sound to the game that like Cole, we've talked about this numerous times. I think we talked about it when we were talking about part 1 when like on the startup screen for PS5 they have that music intro when you go over the tile and you just like
sit
shivers
there for like a minute and it's like oh yes, this is home.
Yep, exactly.
This is home.
And then that just kind of going out, this is just an overall praise of the show, and I'm assuming you two can also jump on this, is just the attention to detail, like all of the little Easter eggs, like the little like composition of like that window frame, like is very evocative of the loading screen in the game, right? When they're like driving away.
There was so many times where I had to like stop myself from pissing my partners off by being like, this is just like the game. This is just like the game.
Look at that little thing.
It's just like the game.
Yeah. And they never like overindulged, I think. I think they paced it and picked their moments really well. And like even in the dialogue, like they kept some lines line for line, but they deviated at other times too, right? Which like it completely worked. And I think their whole mantra with the show really paid off of like, if it worked in the game and it can work for the show, then we will not touch it. We will leave it as it is. But if we want to try and change it and think it was only necessary for the game, then we'll explore different avenues and see what else we could do to make this fresh and new and different, right? So I think that just paid off in dividends. What else? Oh, this is also another tiny little highlight I had. I don't know if you guys have any other things to get in, but I'll just go with this real quick.
Don't worry.
I'm really glad we finally have Left Behind told sequentially in the story. I would have really liked part 1, the remake, to release with that like in sequential order, or at least have it as an option, because it was just more immersive, I think, for the whole experience. And it was really nice having that little side story be incorporated fully into the story.
Wait, sorry, say that again. Left Behind was not incorporated in what?
So Left Behind was the DLC for. So maybe this is why you don't remember it fully.
Probably didn't play
it's DLC that you might have not played, Shay. Surprise!
I most definitely. Okay, that makes a lot of sense because as I was watching this, I'm like, I don't
remember this in the game. Where's this coming from?
Yeah, I was like, I kind of like know what happens, and it must have been because she tells Joel at some point,
right? Yeah,
but like it was all new imagery.
There's a whole DLC for you to play now. How exciting!
I don't think I'm ready.
I mean, honestly, that's you got to emotionally prepare yourself. Yeah, I was just really happy to have that finally in sequential order. Cole, would you like to get into your laundry list?
I'll skip all the pros that we've already talked about.
Okay.
We probably don't have a ton of time. One thing we haven't touched on is the cold opens. Couple great cold opens.
Yes.
The first two episodes, so good.
Those are so good.
That's a great way to just start it. Like if you haven't played the game, that's just a great way to explain the world and what's happening and
and
why
the stakes.
is everyone freaking out? Oh yeah, the stakes exactly.
And then they were very reminiscent of the Chernobyl show, I think.
Yes, yeah. So that was awesome. It was awesome just to see other parts of the world, like see how, especially when she's talking about dropping the bomb, like that was like, I got chills. I was like, I was not expecting anything like that in this game, in this show. And then, we talked about Ashley, her cold open, seeing Ellie. I guess apparently that was supposed to be part of the game and then it got cut. So it's kind of cool to see that. And I mean,
I think it was made into a comic, right? Like they wrote a comic about that or something.
Yeah, I've read it. It's kind of like that. It's more of like building on Ellie and Riley and their relationship. Okay. It's actually really good.
Are we talking about episode 9?
Yeah.
Cold open?
Yeah, the finale.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so that was awesome. The versions from the game, like the Bill episode, was not expecting that. Just devastating. Like I knew the game. I know the show was going to be, have the moments, but was not expecting that. I mean, so sad, but also kind of a happy ending at the same time. Whereas,
a very like the most wholesome episode of the show, arguably.
Exactly. And Bill in the game is like just a dickhead, and he's gonna die alone. So I mean, like that change was like, it kind of took balls to do that because I mean, it's implied he's gay in the game. It's heavily 100%. Implied, but 100%. I mean, I think that's why that episode got so much pushback is because Bill is gay, but I mean he's always been gay, so I don't,
he's always been gay.
I can't stand people who didn't pay attention in the game for that. I mean it's
and that was such a critical episode too. I think that was the best episode for like setting up the stakes and like what are people really like getting like facing with and like losing and like everything that's at risk and just. That episode on its own, I swear, I want them to re-release. Apparently, there's like a 2-hour cut of it that I've heard, and I'm like, just give me Bill and I don't know his name, Frank. Yeah. Thank you. That one
it's so good. I think that episode is also what spurred a big conversation on the internet about the possibility of just having a like anthology series like titled Under the Last of Us, of just these like one-off episodes of these little corners of the world of just this like, which I think it totally makes sense and totally could work. It's just these like one-off episodes of these stories of these people and their connections with each other and the emotions they go through. There's definitely some potential there, which I wouldn't say no to.
There's definitely an opportunity for like a universe.
Totally.
Sure.
Yeah.
And something that could really be made in the interim while we wait for like season 2 or like Last of Us Part 3 or whatever, right?
Well, even just like 15 to 20 minutes. You don't even need 45 to an hour. Like just quick snippets would be perfect. Like
exactly. Part 3 did some damage emotionally for sure. I think the argument too could be made that like people might be mad about the huge deviation, but like it's hard to even picture what else you do that isn't just beat for beat Joel and Ellie going through Bill's town, right? Like
that section is pretty much all combat and gameplay, so you had to deviate somewhere, and that's the episode that makes the most sense. So
totally.
Like, are you really going to expect Joel to be sneaking around throwing bricks and bottles all over the episode? I would have liked one brick or bottle to break in this show.
Yeah, I totally agree. That is one critique I have. I want a 1 brick or bottle.
Did they? I don't remember in that one scene in Boston with Tess, Ellie, and Joel. Did they throw a bottle or brick when they first distracted that first clicker or runner or whatever?
I don't know. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't.
The one that I was just devastated didn't happen was the brick fucking master in Left Behind. That's one of my favorite moments in that entire DLC when they're throwing bricks at the car.
And yeah.
And that I turned to Car and was like, they didn't do it. I was so
so
that
sad.
was my biggest critique of the show.
And so this is just like with like the big asterisk of like having wrestled with the like idea of like being more okay and more accepting of like, yes, this is its own thing. That's totally fine. I'll learn to love this just as much as I've loved the game. Of like just little things that caught me in the moment of watching this show week to week was like the Bill episode in particular. I was really excited to see Nick Offerman and Bella Ramsey go at each other, because
Me
that
too.
dynamic is like one of my favorite parts of the game. They're just
Yeah,
like at each other's throats, telling each other to eat shit. It's like,
yeah.
so good. But like I said, it's totally okay. Like it's preserved in the game. It's fantastic in the game. That's totally okay. Yeah, Cole, do you have a favorite episode in particular?
8 or 5, I think. Fall
8
or
or
winter.
5?
I mean, those are my favorite sections in the game, and I think they nailed them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, seeing live action David was very creepy.
Not awesome, really. Can't really use that word.
No, I don't want to say that. It's very, very creepy. I didn't like. It was implied a lot of the stuff in the game and the show. It was just like, no, he is
Straight up
going to rape Ellie. Like in the game, it was pretty obvious what he was going to do, but here it was like it was hard
the
to
biting
watch.
is the thing I like the most. I don't think that was said in the game, right?
The
What was
witch?
that?
The David's line in the saloon of like, the biting's the thing I like the most, when he's on top of Ellie.
Oh,
Yeah,
that was fucking gross.
So creepy.
It was really bad.
Honestly, referring to that whole part of the series,
bringing up a little bit of
Bella's
uncomfortable
performance when she was smashing his face in.
Yeah,
I
will say Scott Shepherd did a fantastic job of playing David. And I mean, like, that just goes with the entire cast, but he did that so well.
And then seeing Sam and Henry, that again was just devastating. Like, and the fact he was even younger in the show was just, it was so hard.
It was very hard. So another like small detail thing, I love the fact that they included that little town in the underground with the castle painting on the wall. Oh, that was so good, man. And it looked so accurate to the game.
It was the exact same.
It was the exact same.
The painting of Ish was dead on the goal.
It's like they plucked it right out of that level and put it into that episode. It was insane.
I didn't think they were going to do it, because I'm like, there's no way they're going to shoot like a whole episode around that. But it was quick, but it was still so cool to see that. Like,
totally. Yeah.
And also just seeing more of Jackson was awesome. Like the Dina callback was so unexpected, but I was so pumped when I saw her. I'm like, hi, Dina.
Yeah, I just like appreciate, like, going back to like attention to detail and care for the show. You really can see it on display, because like you just said, Cole, like, you didn't see how they could have possibly incorporated something like that little section from the game, but they like almost went out of their way. It's like, because they were deviating in that section of the story, right? Like with Henry and Sam, that was pretty different from the game. But they still were like, well, let's just bring this part back in, right? And it was like, that's awesome to see. It's like, even when they're deviating, they're still honoring the game and trying to incorporate stuff from the game where they can, which is just great.
And in the last episode, I mean, the ladder drop, when she drops the ladder.
That was so good.
I loved that. I was waiting. I was like, I really hope they bring in either like a raft and she has to hop on, or she drops the ladder there.
Or a dumpster or something that probably like weight wise would have been a little tough for Pedro, but
so that was awesome. And then the giraffe scene was so good. The fact that they got a real giraffe, like the entire time I was like, is that a real giraffe? No. Is that a real giraffe? It has to be. And then I was like, it has to be. Like, there's no way. So
that was so awesome. Good. Well, if we're all done oogling over our highlights and lowlights, I mean, we don't really have to go over creator goal. I feel like this has been one big discussion of how they nailed their goal of honoring the source material. And I mean, just from the jump, like we've been saying, the talent that was behind it wanted nothing but care and love and attention to detail for it. So I think they achieved their goal pretty spot on. And I think
Absolutely.
for the most part, like they were successful in their deviations. I think maybe there could have been a little bit more work with like the developing of the relationship between David and Ellie in episode 8.
Yeah,
I
that
think
was the
I
combat
would have.
section I was referencing. Like, it didn't really make sense that he just immediately trusted her. Like, the whole point of
Yeah.
that interaction is like he sees that she can fight and defend herself and defend a
Mhm.
group of
Well, and
people.
she trusts him too, because like
Yeah,
they're defending each other from this horde of infected, and
yeah,
it didn't necessarily need to be that like high
no,
concept. Excuse me. But yeah, I think I would have liked that a little bit more. That would have just added a little bit more believability into that relationship and that dynamic throughout that episode. But I still think it worked pretty well. So I know I feel like it's safe to assume, Cole, you watched it every Sunday night, right? Every week.
yeah.
Shay, I don't know if I'm misremembering, but did you binge a little bit from time to
No,
time?
no, we
No, you did week to
watched.
week as well.
Yeah, we watched every Sunday. There was only one episode. I think it was like episode 7 where we had to wait an entire week
Okay,
because one of us was out of town, and
gotcha.
it would have been
Did a little bit of
terrible.
catch up, but nothing.
Yeah,
Right, there would have been some
yeah,
fallout.
yeah, definitely. So yeah, I watched 7 and 8 back to back, but the rest, yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I did something sort of similar. I had to catch up my girlfriend on a couple prior week episodes, so she was prepared because I was going to watch the episode that was coming up with or without her, so I wanted to make sure she was had the context. So yeah, I did that a little bit too. I'm excited to rewatch it, and I'm excited to watch it in full too. Um, although I don't know if what's going to come first, if I'm going to replay part 1 first, or if I'm just going to watch the show, or I might do them like in tandem with each other. We'll see. Um, but yeah, definitely. Like I'm going to be eagerly waiting Best Buy and Amazon to see when the
Yeah,
pre-order
me
for
too.
the physical copy comes out, because I want that baby on my shelf.
Yeah, me too.
Um, yeah. Shay, would you have any specific people you would recommend this show to?
Honestly, I've been recommending this show to everybody. I have like a diverse group of friends when it comes to like what they prefer in entertainment,
Hmm.
and a, a lot of them have like expressed no interest in the show, and I've just been like, you know what? I think there's something in this show for everybody. Give it a shot. I know it's very easy to just it's a, wrap it up as a zombie apocalypse show.
Yeah.
We've made it very clear that that's just the backdrop of
Hmm.
everything that is going on.
Absolutely.
You have the perfect mixture of like every human emotion, really: grief, violence,
Yeah.
romance, like uh, yeah, I would say pretty safely that this show was made for anybody. Obviously, maybe, trigger warning for folk victims of like sexual assault, maybe
Yeah.
don't
Well,
watch
it's
it.
a heavy show across the board,
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah,
yeah.
It's a very heavy show. So maybe if you're not as into that, then like maybe take some mental preparation. But
definitely.
yeah.
Just wait for
Yeah.
the next season. Eesh.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
if you're not ready for this season, then maybe don't watch the second season.
No.
Yeah, so I'm just at the butt end of part 2 playing the game for the first time, Cole. And I was telling Nick
Nice.
today, I'm like, I I think I'm at the very last scene of the whole thing, but I'm so excited for season 2. I enjoyed well, it's an unfair statement to make because I've outed myself already by not really paying that much attention to part 1. But this might be a whole other podcast, but, like, Abby, I know a lot of people hate her.
I
I
love Abby.
love her. I love Abby so much. I'm so excited to see who they cast for Abby, and
I'm so
yeah.
nervous for season 2. I bawled playing that game the first time, and then I bawled immediately the second time I played it. So I'm not overly excited to see a certain scene. Let's just say that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so like, I think we'll actually get into a little bit more, but like, I'm actually kind of proud of us for not really going into part 2 like at all this whole review. That's pretty crazy. I want to do a little bit of theory talk at the end of this episode. But yeah, I would jump on that wagon as well. If you have never played the game, that doesn't matter. This is a fantastic story, and it has proven that it can transcend mediums. And it has been told in the best medium possible for adaptation, I think. So definitely check it out. And it's also a better time commitment because it's only 9 hours as opposed to the about 15 hours or so part 1, like the actual game offers. So you don't have to deal with any crappy clicker sneak mechanics or any bullshit like that. Not that they were bad in the game, but like you just don't have to deal with it.
The Last of Us is by far the hardest game I think I've ever played, or at least the steepest learning curve. I had to lower the difficulty for a little while to get like the rhythm of all of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it does not pull its punches. Like if you're not paying attention, like it will beat the crap out of you for sure.
I feel like it's a really silly statement to make because it's a video game, but I feel like it's the most realistic in the sense of like trying to survive and having very limited resources and like you get shot once, twice, you're done. Like, yeah.
Totally. Cole, you would recommend this to someone? I don't really. It feels like we don't even need to talk anymore. It's like we're on the same page.
People just being like, they're like, "Are you watching The Last of Us?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's my favorite game." They're like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah, watch the show. It's awesome." That was before it even started.
Hey, Cole, you've heard of this new HBO show called The Last of Us? A little bit, yeah.
Once or twice, maybe. That might be
almost 10 times now.
On the times, but Last of Us, not really.
Not my thing. Excellent. Well, yeah, I guess before we do all of the plugs and whatnot, let's do a little bit of theory talk. So this is actually going to be a secondary spoiler warning since we've been so well behaved this entire episode. Secondary spoiler warning for part 2, more so. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about your expectations for season 2 or season 2 and 3 as the current potential might be going forward, because Craig Mazin, maybe not on record, but like in a passing interview, he mentioned that season or part 2, the game, would take multiple seasons to adapt. So I'm very interested to hear what you guys think of that. Cole, do you want to share?
I mean, part 2 is so much bigger than part 1. So if they try to cram that into 9 or 10 episodes, it would be so tough. Like
even 12, like even if they went 12, like bigger, it's like,
like 20 episodes, they could probably do it. And I really want them to expand on stuff we didn't see, like I mentioned.
Well, and they will, right?
Seattle.
Like, just,
why not? So more Jackson stuff would be awesome. Like we're only there for a bit in the game. More Joel and Ellie together, like after the first part, would be awesome. Like we get some of that. The museum scene, like I expect that to be a full episode. At least I really hope so.
Probably, yeah.
It's like they got to get their money's worth out of Pedro here because we all know what's going to happen. And I'm just excited to see casting too. I know we mentioned Abby there. That's going to be awesome. Dina is huge. Like, but like we've said, we've already seen they've nailed the casting for part 1. So I really don't have any hesitations with who they're going to cast with these big roles because like part 2 was so big, and it's like part 1, we've talked about how dark it is. Part 2 is so much darker. Like it's not a happy story, like at all. There's not like more than a couple hours.
Well, like I mean, like there are happy moments.
Yeah,
but they are
over
crushed.
Over the 30 hours, it's like what 3 hours are like. Oh, this is awesome, and then it's like, oh my gosh, So and they've said more infected. They're going to show more infected in season 2 and 3, which. Awesome. Like,
well, I mean, Rat King alone, man.
Baby.
That'll be good.
That is going to be terrifying.
That is going to be terrifying. It was fucking terrifying in the game, man.
Shay? I recently played it, as Nick knows, like, I think, like, 2 weeks ago. I was on, I've been off for, like, the last 6 weeks, so, like,
Yeah.
that's just been, like, me binging part 2, and I met up
Nice.
with Nick to go see Cocaine Bear, and I was like, "I am at Rat King right now. I am not okay. I can't do it by myself. I have to have my partner sitting beside me. It has to be in the daytime,
I
and it
just
has
want
to
to
be on mute."
say, like, you picked such weird games as recovery entertainment. Like The Last of Us feels like the last. Yeah.
Like,
but
especially part 2, like, oh
yeah.
man.
Yeah, I want to rest and take it easy today. Let me face this fucking monstrosity in the basement of this hospital.
Yeah.
It makes my problems feel a little bit tinier.
Hey, you know what?
Fair enough.
That's totally fair. And you beat it in the end, right? You're almost done the game.
Yeah, actually that was the level where I actually had to decrease it because I was just not getting anywhere. Yeah.
Shay, do you have any specific thoughts for like what you want out of season 2 and or 3?
I mean, yeah, 100% agree with Cole. I think it is necessary that it has to be split into 2 parts. There is way too much that goes on in part 2. I honestly can't even remember a whole lot. I've been trying to quickly Google right now what the frick the characters' names are.
Yeah.
Who are the two siblings that saved Abby that are in the
Levinyara.
end of the game?
The hunters or whatever.
Levinyara.
What are their names called?
Names?
Levinyara.
Lev and
Lev.
Yara. Okay.
Yeah, yes. I'm very excited. I'm assuming that's going to be more of season 3. But yeah, rewinding a bit, museum scene, as you said, Cole. I want a whole episode for that. I think that is necessary. I don't think I have full faith that they won't skip out on that. And as I said, Abby, I didn't know much about Abby before playing part 2, but I knew that the video game community really bashed her for a very long time, or at least for like in the corners of the internet of my algorithms. Didn't really care for her. So when that pivotal moment in the video game swapped over and you're playing Abby for I don't know how many hours,
just as long, pretty much.
Just as long, yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of sad to go back to Ellie, which is an emotion I didn't think that I would have. And yeah,
I mean, that just speaks to the like complexity of that game and the like sheer audacity Naughty Dog had in doing what they did, right? Like they did something no one has done before, and
that is a huge risk. Like
it's a huge risk.
Like the fact that they dedicated a whole half of a game to a whole new character where there's already a huge
killed the main character of the first game that's beloved. Like that is wild. Just thinking about it. Like
like it wouldn't have worked on paper. Like it shouldn't have worked on paper, and they
for most
stuck to their
people
guns.
it didn't. So I mean,
no, like I think people put the controller down when they switched to Abby. I was like, nope, I'm done. I've had enough.
People are ridiculous.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how they do it, because I don't know if it's going to work being like season 2 is all Ellie and then season 3 is all Abby. Like,
so this is where we can get into my theories a little bit.
Let's hear it.
I feel like something that makes the most sense in my brain right now is season 2 could be like almost exclusively all of the flashback stuff and leading up to like the beginning of the game in part 2. And then you really get to explore those relationships and establish Abby as her own character, right?
Yep.
And then season 3 is where you get into the nitty gritty of like the full revenge story and everything, right? And then you still can bounce back and forth between Ellie and Abby and see Abby's journey of redemption a little bit with Lev.
Yeah.
Plus, I mean, just logistically, that would work because then you get high ratings for seasons 2 still, but maybe not so much for season 3.
Yeah. Well, I think it would be interesting to start season 2 first episode just be Abby and like the whole
Yeah.
intro to her and her coming back to the hotel and finding Jerry dead on the floor. Like, I think that would be really interesting. I don't know if they'd do that. I'm imagine it'll start with Joel and Ellie, but I've always thought that would be really interesting to start there and then work your way back. And then, the end of the season probably be the death of Joel and then setting up season 3. That makes the
I
most
think
sense.
I
that
don't
would be
know.
an excellent approach. I think that'd be an excellent approach. Introduce Abby first episode. Obviously, people are going to be invested because they're going to be waiting for Ellie and Joel, and then you become invested in Abby, and then you have your classic reveal of like who you've been waiting for all along, and then you get people hooked for the next episode. I think that would be
and then that
way to
could
do it.
work as a really great transition of like you open with Abby and she sees the aftermath, and then that transitions into Joel telling Tommy what he did, right?
Exactly.
Like the beginning of the game in part 2. And I think that could work really well. Very excited to see where they go going forward. I am very curious to see how long it will be before season 2 is announced for like pre-production and everything. I feel like in my head anyway, I feel like maybe in 2 years at the earliest. It depend I also feel like it would also depend on Bella Ramsey's aging up and how much of that plays into the whole thing, because I definitely don't feel like I feel like they would maybe recast if they were trying to aim for season 2 like this time next year or something,
Well, Bella
but
Ramsey's 20. I think they
yes.
aged them down significantly. I think they could.
Well, I think Ellie is like 20 in part 2 or in and around there. So she's technically already there. But just from like a look standpoint, I mean, they could probably do wonders with like makeup and whatnot. But I feel like probably 2 years at the earliest would make the most sense to me. And just with the sheer scope of that game too, writing all of that out. And I feel like they might tackle the writing, or at least the like first couple drafts of season 2 and 3 together, do like an Infinity War Endgame type thing, right? Yeah.
So there's a lot of threads going through, and if you miss something in season 2, then what are you going to do? So you would pretty much have. I think they'd probably want to film them very close to each other too. So we might get 2 seasons right back to back fairly quick, but we might have to wait, which would be fine. Like,
it would be. It'll be very surprising to see if they go with a more like beat for beat adaptation, where like season 2 is just like the start or like the first half of part 2, and not necessarily just Ellie specific, but they do kind of bounce back and forth between Abby and
up to
Ellie.
day 1 or day 2 or whatever.
So it'll be very interesting. I also forgot one quick low light. We'll try not to get into too much tangents off of this, but a low light for me that still just feels a little weird. I feel like I would have rather it been different or like closer to the game is Tess's kiss of death in episode 2. It's just it was very
jarring.
Interesting choice. It was very jarring. Yeah, maybe that's what it was. I would have just loved to see
flicking the lighter was kind of cheesy too. It was like, she's
I was like, okay,
so, that's the part I didn't like. The kiss was weird, but I was like, it makes sense.
I think what they were trying to go for was just the fact that like Joel and her didn't have like a final kiss. Like he just
maybe I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, that's the way that I took it anyways, is that like they wanted that contrast. Like he just put his head down and left.
Right.
And then that was her final moment. Was
interesting.
Yeah.
But
that's how I took it.
Just that small little tidbit. That will be it for this NoScore review show. I'm also very surprised we didn't go to like an hour and a half. I was totally expecting
that. You can keep going if you want.
No. Settle down, Cole. Settle down.
No.
Cole, do you have any plugs you'd like to shout out and recommendations for the audience?
Recommendations, yeah, sure. If you're a hip hop fan or just a music fan, I highly recommend the Beastie Boys book. I just finished it over the weekend. It's fantastic. So good.
What's it called?
Beastie Boys book.
Oh, okay. Great.
Yeah. It's awesome. It's so good. Of course, MCA is not with us anymore, so you're missing one member, but it's still awesome, super funny, gets heavy at times, but it's awesome. And then movie, The Nice Guys. I give that movie a sequel already. I need it. Okay, come on. We waited too long.
While Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling are still in their prime.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's go. Make another one.
Yeah,
it's so good.
Totally. And any plugs at all? Or just recommendations?
No, just recommendations. No plugs.
Cool.
I got nothing going on.
Okay. That's totally okay. Shay, how about you? Any plugs for the audience and or recommendations?
Plugs, Letterboxd/Shay Martin, Instagram, Shay Martin Media. As for recommendations, there hasn't really been a whole lot lately coming out for me. Okay. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
My top 2 of 2022, which I brought up in most recent podcast, Tar and Bones and All.
Okay. There you go.
There you go.
And a little meta recommendation for yourself, Left Behind DLC.
Yes.
Yes.
And actually play part 1 without skipping.
Yes.
I know.
Play part 1 when you can get your hands on it.
Yes. This summer's coming. I need to, maybe in the fall.
There you go. Perfect. Well, you can find me wherever you're listening to or watching this episode of the NoScore Review Show. I just did an episode on 65, the new dinosaur thriller adventure starring Adam Driver. You can go check out me and Jake tear apart that film because it wasn't great. But go check out the video for our specific thoughts. And March is still stacked for movie releases. I've got a review coming out soon for Scream 6, and Shazam! Fury of the Gods and John Wick 4 are on the horizon as well. You can expect to see the lovely faces you've seen around the NoScore Review Show coming back to return and review those films. You can find me on all the socials at NoScore or at NoScore Reviews, Letterboxd, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. If you don't have access to The Last of Us Part 1 like Shay, or even The Last of Us Remastered, or a PlayStation in general, and you want to check out what the game is like, gameplay and all, not just the cutscenes, you can go check out my other YouTube channel at NoScore Plays, where I did a full playthrough of Last of Us Part 1 last fall in its entirety, left behind and everything. There's a full playlist. I'll maybe even link it in the description down below. So you can go check that out. And speaking of Last of Us Part 1, me and Cole did a full review with our friend Matt of Last of Us Part 1 soon after that game came out. So if you want to go check out our thoughts on that as well, I mean, you probably could guess from this past hour and 13 minutes that we love it. So, I mean, do with that what you will. But if you want more Last of Us content, then you know where to go find it.
Just type my name into YouTube and it'll come up. That's
yeah, exactly. Also, let us know what you thought of The Last of Us Season 1 in the comments, or tweet me at NoScore Reviews. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you, how you felt about the show, or even the game in general, and how you felt about the adaptation overall. I'd love to generate more discussion, healthy discussion online. And I just love talking about this stuff, as you maybe could have tell by this whole channel existing. So, yeah. Thank you all so much for listening and watching. Shay, Cole, thank you again once more for joining me. And we'll see you all in the next review.
Thank you
so much. Everyone in part 3 when I come back again to talk about the last.
You're not going anywhere, Cole.
No.
Bye-bye.
Bye.